What did you
She
say
was
after
saying that if women are brought up to be cautious around men, which is why they potentially have less conflicts with men than when you were saying that men get attacked more frequently than women.
But you could also argue that men have there's something within a lot of men which is like a white knight thing where it's like told never to hit a woman. In fact, I think women have certain privileges on the street. For example, like you, for example, let's say you're walking in some bar or nightclub district and a guy comes up to you and slaps you across the face. There are totally strange men that will intervene on your behalf and essentially be your bodyguards for free that will defend you. However, if I just get slapped in the face by some dude and he starts trying to fuck me up, nobody's coming to save me. So I think that's actually a privilege that women have. You basically, in a public area, you basically have male bodyguards that will intervene on your behalf that are total strangers.
I don't know. Okay. Like, I agree to you to a certain extent, especially like if a woman were to slap you, I highly doubt that you'll have any interveners. But if a random man slaps you, I think you'll have a high likelihood that you're also going to have strangers intervene.
No.
And then also there's been
Police,
multiple
probably.
issues,
Police.
specifically during COVID, like when they started letting the trains run again, where women were being SA'd on the trains in New York, and sometimes for many, many stops, and passerbyers were videotaping it, and nobody was doing anything to help these women. So women do experience that as well. Yeah, I'll agree with you that in general, strangers are more likely to help a woman being beaten than a man being beaten by a woman. But women definitely experience times where strangers will not help them.
I'm not saying that there's never a situation where a woman is being physically assaulted by a man and that it's impossible that the guy doesn't intervene. However, I would say it's very likely if there's other men around seeing a woman being beaten by a man, they are very likely to not just intervene, but beat the fucking shit out of the guy who's beating on the woman. Whereas if I'm getting attacked by another man, I don't know why you flip the genders. If I'm getting attacked by another man, it's very, very unlikely that other men are going to intervene to stop.
And just to say something on that, so for example, when that situation does arise, when a woman is being beaten by a man and there aren't any defenders, oftentimes there could be missing context from the situation. So did you guys hear about the woman who got bricked in the face recently? She literally
we talked about that. Yeah.
Oh, you don't want to talk about it? We don't have to. I was just using it as an example because she was literally saying men weren't standing up for me, men are pussies, they're cowards, this and that, trying to paint this narrative, but there was a lot more to the context than...
Mike Davis donated $100.
Hold on just a sec.
People
Thank you,
be
Mike
thinking
Davis.
I'm anti-women when the fact is I'm anti-everybody. Most men are completely useless working dead-end jobs just to throw that bread at some ethot. But they're self-aware and know they're losers. 300+ pound women think they special. Crazy.
All right, Mike Davis. There you go. The resident. He's on something. Thank you, Mike Davis. Appreciate it.
I think that although in theory it sounds like, oh yeah, like, men will be valiant and stand up for women. There's a reason why women are even given advice like, hey, if you're being assaulted or if some like strange guy's trying to attack you, instead of yelling like help, like I'm being SA'd, instead they say you should scream fire, because like there is like the bystander effect. There is a lot of people, both men and women, in the face of atrocities freeze or think that somebody else called the police, somebody else is going to do something about it regardless of gender.
I kind of want to talk about why men defend women when they see them being harmed on the streets. I think most of the time, like the average woman's height is like 5'4" versus the average male height is 5'9", and there's a lot more muscle mass when you're a guy in general. And I feel like people tend to want to defend people who are
Tiny.
like just smaller. Like it's like if you see someone literally like beating the shit out of a kid, or someone who is that cannot physically defend themselves, then you're more inclined to help. If someone's beating on an old person in a wheelchair, it's like, hey, stop that. So,
I agree with that. I think if there's a disparity in size or strength, I think there's perhaps even if it's two men, there might be a greater likelihood of intervention. And certainly your examples with if it's someone who's elderly, a child. I actually, yeah, that's a fair point. You said you had a question for me before you went up to.
Oh yeah,
the
I was
bathroom.
wondering how many people you share your location with on your phone. Like just Find My Friends if you have an iPhone or Android.
How many people I don't think I share my location with anybody.
So I want to bring up that most women share their locations with other women and friends just as
Sure.
like a primary safety. Like, hey, if I go on this date, this is where I'm at. Something
Sure.
could happen, and it's just we're taught to always be cautious because things can happen, and then we get blamed if something does happen. A lot of times, like if someone drugs our drink, or if someone ends up assaying us, like it's typically like, oh, we didn't take enough precaution. You always have to have an out, like, hey, like I'm right here, come pick me up, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
All right. Okay. Let's fucking talk about something else. Hold on. Let me see if there's any chats. Let me get rid of this.
It's just
No.
men don't go to dangerous places.
I mean, as far as, okay, just really quick, me personally, like me not sharing my location, I don't go to bars, I don't go to clubs, I don't go to parties. So I'm not putting myself in potentially violent situations that often happen when you are like, so it's plausible that a girl that 3 times a week she's getting fucking tanked at bars and nightclubs, it's probably likely that she's going to be sharing her location with more people because she is putting herself in those sorts of, when you're out at nightclubs and bars and parties,
No,
like
I
it is a
started doing
vulnerable,
that. I
it's a
started doing that in
vulnerable
college.
position for both men and women.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, I
but
don't share my location with anyone.
Oh,
'Cause I
really?
don't, yeah, I don't put myself in those situations where I feel like I would
You
need
get
to.
a little-
I used to share it with my ex.
You might need to just
Yeah.
volume on
And to
her.
be honest, when I came over here and I traveled to California, I kind of thought about that. I'm like, wow, he was the only person who actually had my location, and I'm here in this state where I don't know anyone. And I did think about that for a second. But to your point, no, I didn't. I'm not with a bunch of my friends. It was with one person.
I mean, I don't really go to a bunch of clubs or bars or anything, but I always share my location no matter what with like my best friends, with just people that, even if we're just like having dinner or something, like, oh, where did you park? And it's just like very casual for me.
Right.
But maybe it's like the location or like age thing. I don't know.
I actually do share my location with a lot of people too, and I think it might be like a physical location thing because I live in the middle of LA. I'm not gonna share where, but I don't feel safe walking around sometimes. Going to the grocery store by myself sometimes, which is why I share my locations
Sure.
Yeah.
with friends.
Also, I would point out, I think you mentioned the word feel, right? So I do think it's the case that women feel less safe, but like if you look at the actual data, the actual statistics, as far when it comes to violent crime across the board, generally speaking, men are more likely to be victims of violent crime. They're more likely to
To
be
be
mugged.
fair.
So, but then you don't want to be harassed either, even if they're not going to stab you. You don't want someone following home and like hit on you either.
Yeah, sure, yeah. That doesn't
Yeah.
sound, you don't want someone following you, of course.
Yeah.
Did
and
you have
I
something
don't
for this,
think-
Lauren? It sounded like.
Well, just like you said violent crimes across the board, so I'd imagine those statistics, a lot of them would include like gang violence and then also men who are assaulting each other, and then one is considered the victim even though they're both kind of at it fighting with each other. So I think that's going to inflate the statistics. I don't really know.
Wait, what?
You're saying that men,
So the incidence
Statistic-
of violence perpetrated by men, you're saying that's inflated by male versus male violence as well, which is being categorized into that statistic.
yeah, so like not so much just like random victims on the street. I don't think that like men are being perpetrated more often than females, like in those situations.
They are, though.
Also,
For, like mugging and stuff.
You don't
Yeah.
think your statistics are inflated by gang violence and other types of like violence among
No.
male
If
groups?
you probably removed gang violence, it would still be more likely.
I think as brought earlier, it also depends like on type of violence, and that's why women are like more cautious as well, because I think that there is a very big difference for people saying like, oh, you know, we got into a fist fight, maybe there was like a stabbing versus like, oh, there was a potential stabbing and SA, right? Or human trafficking potentially, or things of that degree. So I think that also, for a lot of people, it's like, would you rather be beat up or would you rather be horribly SA'd? And I think a lot of people would pick like the beating up.
Wait, so hold on. You're comparing SA to getting beat up, but like, let's talk about murders. Men are more likely to be victims of murder. Would you rather be SA'd or be murdered?
Oh, you don't want me to answer this question? I
mean,
think you literally.
Okay, you'd rather be murdered. That's, I mean.
No, I mean, I don't think that's an answer other people should have. But
it's not a fair comparison to say, would you rather just get into a fist fight or get fucking violently SA'd?
Well, no,
that's not
but
a fair
that's
comparison.
exactly, that's the point. You're saying like, oh no, men overall, they're more victims of violence, et cetera, et cetera.
They are.
No, I'm not
There are
disagreeing
certain,
with that.
now there's differentials in terms of women are more likely to be SA'd, although
Then murdered,
I mean,
yeah.
Yes,
you
women
can't-
are more likely to be human trafficked. Women are more likely to be victims of domestic assault.
We're talking about
in the United
States, right? Okay.
Women are more likely.
What does it mean to be human trafficked? Just so I'm clear, are we talking like pimping?
Yeah, or
Pimped out, labor. There's labor trafficking. There's a lot of different types of human trafficking. You're more likely to like be a maid than trafficked here.
So basically, it goes beyond. A lot of people, when they think human trafficking, right, they think I'm a slave, like I'm in chains, or I am being like physically or mentally exploited, right? But what they're saying now is that the Loverboy method of human trafficking is also equally punishable under a court of law, meaning that like you could get the same level of punishment, prison time, everything for the Loverboy method versus any other forms of human trafficking, which are done by force versus coercion. So coercion is basically like making a woman believe that you love them, right? And then forcing them into sex work under some type of guise of relationship or cohabitation situation, which is what the Tates are facing right now.
That's Romanian law, and that's Romanian law.
That's also coercion is also applicable under U.S. law as well.
Right.
How
And
do you prove coercion?
so you have it's pretty subjective, but you're trying to show that there's some sort of power dynamic. So I read the Romanian law, and I don't know the American law because I wasn't interested in it. And at least in Romania, they specifically say that there has to be some sort of power differential where the person feels like a loss of control. And what they're trying to say in the Tate case is they have some text message exchange in which now there's debate whether or not this text message exchange is real, but in which it seems like the Tates are saying let's get poor people and let's get poor girls who will not be able to leave and yada yada. But there's doubt whether or not that's a real text exchange. There's doubt whether that will be admissible evidence. It's doubt whether or not that's about the women that are the prime victims alleged victims in the case. So yeah, but because
So
technically
it's kind of hard to prove coercion completely, unless you have physical documented evidence.
It's very difficult. It's kind of like a rape case, right? Unless you have the physical evidence, right, and you're able to get a rape kit immediately
Right.
after.
Yeah, let's not
rape.
talk about that.
Great.
But sorry, that it's a very similar type of thing, right? Where it's highly subjective in the court of law.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, yeah.
I have a question though. Okay, so when it comes to DV, right? So you often hear interpartner violence that men are just beating women up en masse. But what's interesting to me is domestic violence rates are actually lowest amongst gay men and highest amongst lesbian women. So
I believe it.
So
I believe it.
So how's the rate of reporting?
That's kind of
Or is it
interesting.
reported? Is
What
it
do you mean
it's the
reported?
rate of reporting. You don't think women would report more likely than men?
I think men don't report DV at all. I think there are a lot of abusive women out there who beat men up, but men choose to not report to the police.
So you're saying, that's almost further proving my point a little bit, but
yeah, I think what is it? At least from the self-reports, separate from let's say police reports, it still seems like there's a disparity. But I absolutely can agree with you that a lot of men are disincentivized from going to the police or reporting in general because there's a general stigma against men who are in these situations, and that's really sad and horrible.
However, I would say that most men, on average, can overpower a woman, and if a woman decided to physically beat a man up, the man can stop them physically, just muscle mass wise. And